Hello. The new Ableton Live 12.2 has an updated Roar device, and I really am a big fan of Roar, which is a creative distortion device. And what is new in this update? Well, they've added a new delay routing mode. In this mode, the second stage processes the delayed signal from stage one. Unlike feedback routing mode, the delayed signal is sent to the second stage without being scaled by the feedback gain. So this creates a single distorted repetition or slapback. The output of stage two is fed back into itself and scaled with the feedback gain, enabling multiple repetitions and long signal tails. The blend control can be used to mix between the output of stage one and stage two. So that's one of the things. And added a new dispersion filter type. This filter distorts the signal's phase in a frequency-dependent manner and can lead to interesting metallic spring-like artifacts, especially when modulated and moved around. Additionally, they've added an external sidechain that can be used to feed the envelope follower modulation source with signals from other chains or tracks. So I'll try to remember to demo that with like a drum loop. Added a MIDI sidechain that can be used to control the pitch of the feedback in note mode. Sick. An envelope hold toggle is now available in the envelope section. It ensures that the envelope completes its entire attack phase before entering the release phase. And then the last thing is the modulation signals are now visualized using LEDs in the modulation column. This helps identify how modulation sources are set up and whether they are active in any modulation routing without needing to dive into the modulation matrix. So I thought a good way to check this out would be to use a very, very simple source of audio that's running through Roar. And so I created an operator patch that's just one sine wave, real clean. So that way, as we start adding distortion, we can see the results clearly. So I'm going to just start by turning on Roar. And right away you can see there's this extra very low level amount of saturation happening. There's an overtone being created. As I exaggerate that, you can see it's a whole series of them. So that's the single routing mode in Roar. And so we just have one stage of saturation or distortion. And in this case, the shaper is a soft sine. So that's just soft clipping. And as I push the amount, let me clear this thing. You can see what's going on there. This drive knob affects the initial volume going in. So if your signal is a little weak going in, you can turn it up with the drive, and you can turn it down if it's a little too strong. Another control that's pretty important on all the variations here is the bias. So let's get a little bit of action going here. We can see the bias introduces a DC offset, which is useful for producing asymmetrical clipping. You can hear that it starts to bend the shape of the until it disappears at a certain point at the far end. So that's bias. Okay, there's also a filter after the distortion, so you can filter out some of the sound. And in the list of filters is now these new comb, resampling, and dispersion filter types. So we'll get to demoing that now. So just wanted to start with the most basic setup here. The feedback section is where we'll push things into really interesting places. And there's a couple of shaper settings that are best for that. There's a compressor built in, and we'll just leave it in its default setup for now. Okay, so knowing that the operator preset is so simple, I'm going to close that up so it's easy to deal with the view that we have here. And I'm going to close the spectrum view and open Roar's ginormous view, where it has the ability to have 3 stages per three stages total, and these are disabled until you need them, and I'll show you where you might need them. So in serial mode, a second stage is enabled, and they will run from stage 1. The audio goes in stage 1 and then goes to stage 2 and then out of Roar. So you can see here, and you can see on the Roar interface that the routing has a graphic, so it's straight through. And so now we've got 2 layers. We had a soft shaper on the bottom layer, but let's try something else, on the first layer. We'll try something else on the second layer. Let's listen through the list. Digital clip, bit crusher. You can hear that the bit crusher is very jagged, and you can see it here on the display. That's diode. Tube preamp. Half wave rectifier. Full wave rectifier. Remember that the source is just one sine wave. Polynomial. Fractal. And now that's just on the second stage. So I haven't really done much with trying to combine the distortion. It just basically has a soft shaper on the first stage. But I feel like you have to break down each little possibility first and hear what it does before you start combining them and modulating them, and it gets really complicated in a good way. But if you just jump in and start throwing things together, you may miss how they subtly interact. Trifold. Noise injection. It's like erosion, which is another much older effect device. The bias sounds really cool, modulating it around with noise as the shape. So that'd be something cool to assign to one of the modulators in a moment here. And then shards. There's a lot of chaos and movement you can see just in its own static. It's like static electricity. So that same single note, maybe if I just turn off roar for 1 second, this note becomes this. And that's just the basic serial routing. So let's jump into some more routing business here. So parallel routing is when these two stages run side by side. So the signal runs and splits into two, and one of the versions goes through stage 1, the other goes through stage 2, and then they combine, are remixed afterwards. And there's a blend amount below that you can put mix them together. So if I switch back and forth really quickly to serial, so that's in a straight line, one to the next, and parallel is a little more subtle, and you can make changes to one and it happens without affecting the other layer. That's pretty cool, just playing with the blend amount. Maybe go back to Okay, so the next routing option is multiband. So that way what happens is it splits the signal running into roar into highs, mids, and lows in terms of frequency bands, EQ. And so you can affect the lows, the mids, and the highs separately. So here we have a soft shaper on the lows. The mids have this noise shaper, and the highs we could go with maybe they don't have that weird shards. It's subtle. There's not much going on up there in the super highs. Yeah, but it's a little top detail. next routing style is mid-side. So it sends the first stage is the center mono information, and the second stage is the stereo information. It's the sides. So the hard stereo stuff, the stuff that doesn't contain any mono stuff. And the mono doesn't contain any of the stereo stuff. And so that's how you can get some subtle effects. We can push that noise. Oh, interesting. Because it's such a mono sound, I bet we get more out of it if I turn on the spread. Yeah, now there is interesting. Of course. We weren't hearing it because it was a purely mono sine wave. So there wasn't any stereo information to get affected by stage 2, the side stage. But now I made it, you turned the spread knob up in Operator and turned it into a stereo sounding. And now you're hearing the mid and the sides. The next routing style is feedback. Oh yeah, that's one of the new ones. Or that it's delay is the new one, but feedback is part of the cool updates here is feedback mode. You can see that we've got a direct, that's the first stage, and then a feedback stage that we have we have the noise shaper currently. If I want to change to maybe that half wave rectifier, it's just the feedback that's responding to that half rectifier. I can make the length long and it becomes a delay type of effect. But the feedback is the other distortion flavor. Remember, this is the source. Very cool. So you can do sync to project timing with the feedback delays. The other routing is just called delay. Cool. I'm going to back up to single mode for a second and open up the modulation section. And you can apply modulation like all over the place to different things. So let's do that. Let's pick a these different filter types. We're familiar with the band pass and the low pass and high pass, but how about the comb filter? Let's put an LFO on that. Resampling. Alrighty. Let's make it a little more complicated here. Parallel. Let's try the dispersion. Let's have some fun with the external sidechain. The source will be this drum loop from my Boom Bap Breaks 24 that came out last year. It sounds like this. But we're just going to use it as a sidechain thing for now. just to remind you, this is the source tone the whole time. So all of that was Roar and its internal modulation matrix doing all of that rhythm. Some of it was coming from a side chain of that drum loop, was triggering the envelope, and so I could assign that to all these different parameters. But as you can see, we barely scratched the surface because there's so many combinations possible where you could have, I mean, you won't even list them off. You saw how many infinite directions you could go, and all of it's automatable internally, and you can make that rhythmic pulsing thing and really experiment a ton. So hope you had fun checking that out. That was fun for me. I know it ended up with some pretty random results, but I hope you have some fun messing with Roar in the new Ableton 12.2 update. Thanks for hanging. Have a good day.